Hello everyone, a very logical day to all of you. So October 11, 2023, the editorial that we are going to discuss is from the Life Mint. Economic Nobel Prize was received by a person. Now let us see based on or why she got this. Gender inefficiency. अब हम इसके बारे में पढ़ते हैं. Reading part देखते हैं. So, an economy tilted against women fails to make the best use of its resources, laureate Claudia. So, Golden popped a money myth, studied gender gaps, and opened paths to potential solutions. So, there are gender gaps and then potential solutions there. So, COVID pandemic sent people home and revived the question of whether flexible work could help solve India's problem. So this was a question raised for abysmal levels of workforce participation by women. So abysmal, we have done this word recently somewhere, right? Abyss is a huge gap. Abysmal is like not very good. So problem of abysmal levels of workforce participation by women, मतलब वो बहुत कम है participation of the women. Work done by this year's winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics, Claudia Golden, a Harvard professor awarded for having advanced our understanding of women's labor market outcomes. Right. Could guide us towards an answer, not just to that, but maybe to other questions as well. Now, when he says not just to that, but maybe other questions as well, that means you can understand what that paragraph would be there. As why women are paid less than men. So now this is the disparity. You can see here the gender disparity. That is a very in topic nowadays. So gender disparity has been studied deeply by Professor Golden, who looked back at. Looked back at means then she started considering कि ऐसा gender disparity हो क्यों रहा है. The records for 2 centuries plus. So 2 centuries means 200 years. It's not a small time period, right? What she studied was for 2 centuries कि आगे window women disparity या gender disparity कितना हो रहा है, क्यों हो रहा है, कैसे हो रहा है, कब से हो रहा है. That is what she studied. Working out ways to fill data gaps, no mean task. No mean task means it is not a small thing. Mean means बिल्कुल छोटा सा. So it's not a small thing. It was like a Herculean task. इतना ज़्यादा कुछ करना है. 200 years के बारे में समझना है कि gender disparity कैसे चली, कहाँ चली, right? Or how male chauvinism can warp statistics. किस तरीके से उसे घुमा सकते हैं? Chauvinism, feminism, these are words again we have recently studied, right? So how all these things can actually change the statistics totally, the drivers of gender gaps, and they changed over time. Although America is not India and our labor markets differ, many of our findings resonate with us, right? अब इसमें से assumed क्या है या inferred क्या है या concluded चलो हम करते हैं. तो इस sentence हम क्या conclude कर सकते हैं कि दोनों को labor markets अलग हैं. तो लेकिन implied भी ये है कि कुछ तो एक जैसी चीजें हैं. That means all those things, all those findings that she got from her study, right? If they are according to the American labor markets, quite a few, or there are quite a few similarities between the American labor market and the Indian one, right? And therefore, these are resonating at least on a few terms. A U-shaped curve for the labor participation of married women in the US, for example, may apply to any evolving economy. So any evolving economy, that means what? How she studied, what she studied for the US economy and the labor market. The same thing could be applied to any other economy. Women or gender ki baat ho rahi hai, so they would almost be the same, right? So traced by her, this key gender variable dropped as the industrial age split homes and workplace apart and then recovered with the services boom. So in the industry age, they split the homes, workplace अलग हो जाएगी और रहने की जगह अलग होगी. अगर ये अलग अलग हो गए, and then what came was the services boom. So the trail of 2 centuries made it amply clear that economic emergence in terms of output is not enough for gender equity. Economic emergence सिर्फ इतना ज़रूरी नहीं है जेंडर इक्विटी के लिए. क्यों? क्योंकि और भी चीज़ें ज़रूरी होंगी. There are many factors which are affecting this gender disparity, right? Only half of all women today are in paid employment. Only half paid employment globally compared to 80% of men, right? तो ये सबसे पहले difference बता रही paid employment का. And the former still tend to earn less. So this is glaringly inefficient. Right, glaringly inefficient मतलब एक तो सिर्फ 50% of the women are say paid employment, right? And then too they are getting paid very less. An economy with fewer opportunities for the women and unequal terms on offer fails to make the best use. अगर ऐसी बात होगी तो they fail to make the best use of its resources. That means the women less paid, low pay they are getting, and only 50% of them are in the paid jobs. So they are not being utilized. But in the US, a 20th century uptrend of women at paid work and its apparent correlation with prosperity had incubated intellectual laziness on the issue. Intellectual laziness on the issue मतलब ज़्यादा लोगों ने अपना दिमाग नहीं लगाया. On the insight that female farm and workshop workers of the 19th century had been undercounted, Professor Golden fixed that data flaw to reveal a remarkably high ratio of married women working in the agrarian times. This variable slid as factory office work took off, only to rise again as services emerged. That means agrarian में the married women की ratio ज़्यादा था. It slipped when they started with the factory or the office work, right? And then it took up again in the services sector. So this is showing the rise and the fall or the changes there. Now, crucially, by popping a myth that arose from correlation mixed up with causation. Causation yani jo, you can relate it to the causal factors, the cause. And she made academia study the barriers women face as an economy structure changes. Now, she explored the family context, the domestic, the marriage and the domestic duties played a role in keeping the women back, even as education and other factors pushed the other way. Education and the other factors pushed the other way ka matlab, if the marriage and the domestic duties held the women back, there were other factors and there was education which actually pulled them towards the professions. Now, what career paths to expect, if any? If any से भी बहुत कुछ author ने बोल दिया है. If any, after motherhood, and what education to invest in took generations to settle in the US. मतलब शुरू से ही उन्हें किस बारे में या कौन से stream में educate किया जाए, so that they are able to get good jobs. Even that took a long time to settle in the US. Now, even if the young knew their work lives needn't follow their mothers, a haze over earning prospects was a holdback. America's big reset of the past half century was the contraceptive pill. It let women delay the childbirth and make confident career choices in diverse fields, even male bastions. Male bastions का मतलब क्या हुआ कि ऐसे fields जहाँ पर mainly the males used to dominate, even in those fields now the women can not take over, but yes, the women can also go there. Select those fields. So vitally, incentives to invest in women's education suddenly went up. That was important again. So Professor Golden's research tells us that enhancing expectations is still a must. Right. While the US gender gap in earnings has reduced, यहाँ पे तो ये reduce अभी तक तो हुआ है, but it is also proving to be a sticky wage problem of another kind. What kind? So her review of pay gaps found industrial era gains for women over 1820 and 1850 and 1890 to 1930 before a long plateau over 1930 to 1980. right? They were increasing, but then there was a plateau. That means they were stagnant. Okay. In spite of the social empowerment, was pay stagnant था. Alas, it is still slow going. And baby breaks explain some, but not all of it. So, the social story of Indian women may differ. वो सब पूरा अमेरिकन women के हिसाब से था. अब social story थोड़ा सा different होगा, but broad structural shifts may plausibly have had a role in our 21st century drop in the women's workforce participation, even if the dominant factors at play are far more complex. A lengthy article, but then you have understood why that person went up to how much she would have researched to come to these conclusions. So we can still read this much. उन्होंने तो research किया 200 years का, हम इतना तो पढ़ ही सकते हैं. So thank you, and see you soon again with the next article. And let's see from where we'll take it. This is from the Live Mint, and yesterday you had from the Millennium Post. उसके पहले कहीं New York वाला था, New York Times, and there was Telegraph, there was Guardian also. So let's see now. Thank you, and stay logical.